time. Renegade Online.
Whoops, hit the wrong button there, folks. Good to see you back here live at 5 on a Wednesday afternoon. Welcome back to Renegade Online. It is Wednesday, July 3rd, and since I won't see you again before Sunday, you guys and girls out there in the U.S., of course, have a very happy Independence Day tomorrow. Enjoy the time with your family. But for right now, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. We have got the Acolyte Episode 6, which, even though it was much ado about nothing, or as I joked after the first couple of episodes of this show, the show is trying to do Seinfeld, but it's bad. It's a show about nothing. So Seinfeld did it better. And as a matter of fact, this week, even though it was much ado about nothing, there was something in there that I thought was quite striking. We got our first, I don't really want to call it a nude scene in a Star Wars show, but we all got the idea. We're going to talk about that because, one of the things that happened here was, well, speaking of Seinfeld, it reminded me of something.
Oh my God!
I'm wondering if it's honorable to kill me like this.
I'm really sorry.
Your anger betrays your thoughts.
Do women know about shrinkage?
What do you mean, like laundry?
Like when a man goes swimming afterwards?
It shrinks?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. This is now Disney Star Wars. And not to be outdone, you know what? We always talk about the shill media, or as our friend Raging Rhino over there in Australia likes to call them, the SEAL media. Yay, Disney Star Wars. The SEAL media out there today just can't get over themselves. And here we go again. Star Wars' biggest problem is the fans. That from Collider magazine. Of course, we always have to cover a few items from the Daily Fish Wrap out there, but Collider gets the crown today. We'll talk about that as well. James O'Keefe from O'Keefe Media Group also dropped the third and what we believe to be the final segment, at least for the current entry of the Disney tapes. Now, James has indicated right after the first episode dropped about 2 weeks ago now, that since then he has been contacted by other current and former Disney employees, I believe he said, to tell their story. So I suspect there's going to be some follow-up. You guys saw us on Sunday talk with our buddies from Echo Base Network, and they had a guest that was a former Disney employee of nearly 20 years contact them after seeing some of the things out there from places like Film Threat from James O'Keefe, and then, of course, Knee Pain, who was a former Lucasfilm employee who got so scared he wound up deleting a lot of his videos, including the one that triggered the issue where he talked about how he basically doesn't recognize Star Wars anymore, and he was with Lucasfilm for quite some time. But they got another person reach out after that to share their story of, as they allege, racial discrimination and whatnot. Today's drop from James O'Keefe, not a long one, but quite a punchy one. And it goes specifically into LGBTQ issues and what Disney would like to do with them more eventually with kids. So we'll get into that. So we've got a few things to talk about. We have a few guests backstage. I'm going to bring them in just a minute. But let me do this first. And for those of you here, thank you for being here. Please make sure you hit the like button. And if you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe. Also, please hit the share button. Let everybody know on Twitter and Facebook out there in social media what you're watching. We certainly appreciate that. Hitting the like button is free. We always like to try to get to 1,000 likes for each of these shows. And they tend to hit that right about the time we end or shortly after on Wednesdays. We might have quite the traffic on Wednesdays we usually have on Sundays, but still a great show nonetheless because, like I said, we've got a lot to go through. But here, supporting us are our wonderful channel members and viewers out there. We appreciate you. You can super chat. You can gift memberships. We get and read every super chat on the show. So we'll make sure we'll get to your questions and comments if you put them through. Thank you to Araxis for always being right out of the gate with 5 gifted channel memberships. And thank you to Staccato DDS. Good sir. Thank you so very much for all of your continued support. A whopping 50 Valiant Renegade channel memberships. That's a $250 super chat. Thank you, Staccato. God bless you, sir. We really appreciate you. All right, let me bring in my guests here that we have waiting backstage. First, our dear friend from Force of Light Entertainment, who I am so glad will be getting to hang out next week, about a week from now. I can't believe time is flying. Next week in Knoxville at the con. Hope some of you can make it. Drunk 3PO will be there. Gina Carano will be there. We were going to be having a good time. We've got a couple little things we're trying to plan together. So Michelle from Force of Light, and you are all ready for real Pride Month. American Pride Month is here, baby.
Heck yes. Yeah. Yay, America.
And also joining us from an unknown vehicle, Ron Coleman.
How you doing?
Where are you, sir?
I'm in lovely Passaic, New Jersey.
Okay.
It's just a great place to, I'm in really the best parking lot in Passaic. It's a reason. It's awesome because there are cell towers on top of this new building. It's a shopping mall. It's a shopping center. I get a lot of my work done here, and I don't have to bother Mrs. Coleman, whose concentration is very sensitive. She, if I can't be in my super studio in Newark, then this is frequently where I do my work.
Well, good deal. We have a lot to go through, and I know, Ron, I sent you a bit of that earlier today. I said, take a look at this and see what you think. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, but it was something I was going to throw out there this evening because I thought it was...
I don't mind, speaking in general terms about it. I mean,
general terms.
Pretty strange.
Yeah, we'll get to that. You would not believe a legal defense that Disney is trying to employ right now in a lawsuit they're embroiled in regarding an individual who had an incident at a restaurant. I think people were talking about this a few months ago, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Thank you, Rad Jedi, for the $50 super chat and 10 gifted Valiant Renegade channel memberships. Thank you, my buddy. WPLJ Packing Protons Radio. This is the new handle, or did you change your old one? The meaningless acronym inspired by Val and Pro Returns. Oh, because we got that. He said WPLJ last week. Okay, I get it now. You're messing with me. Time to remind the kids of comedy greatness. 95.5 WPLJ Radio, streaming 24/7 online now. Thank you, Packing Protons.
I'm so jealous of those pipes, man. Gosh, you really... Valiant Renegade here with you. So, I used to be a radio disc jockey at Princeton. Ron Coleman here with you on WPR Beats 85 here in town. We're going to be up with The Clash in a couple of minutes, right after this word from the Princeton Record Exchange. But I'm a tenor, it's not... I don't have that...
You sound great. I love the cadence is the thing. I had the
cadence.
That's the key with it. That's what it really does.
No, that's right. There's some people who really did make a career in radio without necessarily having great pipes, but who... Casey Kasem.
I was just about to say Casey Kasem.
Casey Kasem.
Yeah, it's Casey Kasem.
Whoa.
This week's Top 100 with Casey Kasem. Yeah. That voice was iconic. You knew it when you heard it. It was the cadence that he delivered. Dustin Sensenig for $5, slowly but surely getting caught up with House of the Dragon, #Team Black. Dang right, #Team Black. I tell you what, that episode this Sunday, a lot of people were saying, oh, that really was kind of slow and dragged out. I'm like, yeah, but here's the difference. This is the difference between House of the Dragon slow burn and Star Wars' no burn. It's that even in a slow show, a slow episode like that, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of character building development. There's a lot of things being very well set up, well established, so that when you have that turn, when you have that twist later on, you feel it because everything was put into place. The Acolyte is could not be more completely opposite of the writing style, which is to say there barely is one. This week's episode of The Acolyte was just another, and I've talked about this with Coach and Nick and a few other people. We all seem to be on the same page because Coach and Nick are big House of the Dragon fans like me, and it's so hard. I finished the Sunday Night Live show. I go sit down on the sofa. I get right because that's 8 o'clock Central is right when House of the Dragon drops, right about the time we finish the show. I go right to watching it. It's an hour well spent, and then 48 hours later, I got to turn around and suffer through the next episode of The Acolyte. It's like it's the most anticlimactic part of the week for me.
Man, it's become a chore, hasn't it?
It's so rough, Michelle. It's so rough. I mean, I'm staying up till I think I dropped my review video last night around midnight Eastern, 12:30 Eastern. Because I was like, well, it worked last week. I dropped last week's video at almost 2:30 in the morning Eastern.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, let's try it. 60,000 views. And I'm like, okay, we'll do that again because people are hungry for it. It's a lot of international audience at that point, but it's worked. So, and then to turn around and talk about it on a live show with the other news of the day. So it's just, whoo, it's a rough one. But in any event, let's kind of dive in here. Mr. Coleman, how much time do you have, sir?
What if we say, I can go through the hour?
Okay, let's do this because I'd like to get both of your reactions to this piece. Michelle, have you seen the new James O'Keefe piece yet?
No.
Oh, good. This will be a treat. Here we go. So I'm going to preface this. Have you seen the first two parts, Michelle?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the third part. It dropped about 2 hours ago now. This one's much shorter. The total runtime is 12 minutes. The first few minutes is a setup. There's really about 6 or 7 minutes minus James's commercial that he has in here. It's pretty simple, but it's pretty punchy here. So I'm gonna skip ahead till after he does the intro here and just kind of move into it. He does a recap of the previous videos, the previous guests he had on for Mr. Giordano and Mr. Mocker here, production and finance. So we've seen those. So let's get into the third guy.
And out-of-place diversity characters in places they clearly don't recall. Mocker.
I guess, for lack of a word, non-white, non-Jewish.
You'll recall Mocker also talks about Disney's over-the-top insistence on jamming woke storylines and out-of-place diversity characters in places they clearly don't fit creatively. Which now brings us to Disney Tapes Volume 3. From classic Disney princesses to drag queens. The transformation of children's programming at the Walt Disney Company is in full effect.
Now,
Not
remember,
a week goes by without a...
This is a commercial. Now, what you just saw there, I just want to make this clear because this is the character you see in my thumbnail right now. This was actually on Disney Plus. You see the logo there. This was a Disney Plus featured entry. Okay? So just to establish that to be clear. So let's skip past his medical emergency kit commercial and let's just go down to where he gets into the meat and potatoes here. As you can see, it's not a long video, so we'll be able to go through this pretty quickly.
Creative marketing director Jeannie Giordani by OMG. Now let's meet Disney's creative marketing director Jeannie Giordani. By day, Jeannie is Disney's creative marketing director, and by night, he's a professional drag queen. According to his LinkedIn page, Jeannie is a Berkeley grad and has a variety of jobs, including working at Netflix and Vice Media. So what exactly does creative marketing director Jeannie Giordani do at Disney?
Just real quick, you could have stopped at Vice Media. That's all I would have needed to know. Right there. I know Ron knows what I'm talking about. I mean, that's enough right there.
Dez's focus is on creative strategy across all Disney's television brands.
So what do you do at Disney? Creative marketing director, right?
Yeah. So
What is that?
I'm marketing. I'm a director of a marketer for lots of bunch of brands. But I started on CREEPDOM, which is a young adult TV brand.
Yeah.
And I was leading social creative on that brand. So did all these things for a year.
Yeah.
Well, a bunch of stuff to lead there with you. So put together most research, etc. And I did creative direction for it. Then I switched over to creative strategy across the television brands.
Our brave undercover journalist from our American Swiper program, and you can sign up here, met Jeannie on the dating app Bumble and managed to score a date with the drag queen.
I swear, when O'Keefe started saying that, he met him on the dating app, I really thought the next word I would have put $100 would have been grinder. But it was. Did you think
that's what he was going to say?
Thank you. I was about to say, I'm like, please, if he says grinder, I'm going out of the chair. I'm on the floor. He said,
that just would have been too perfect.
Yeah, he said Bumble, not far off. There we go.
Now, before we dive into...
Michelle, do you know what we're talking about with grinder?
I've never even heard. I've heard of Bumble. I've not heard of Grinder.
I'd tell you to Google it.
You tell her
but
now.
Yeah. It is okay. Think of, you know how cheap and tawdry Tinder is and what that's used for?
Yeah.
It's that, but even worse, and it's expressly for gay men.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Genie's career at Disney, let's look deeper into his drag queen credentials. Apparently there is an elite grouping of high-profile drag queens such as Daikon and Tiffany Rose that Genie associates with. According to Genie, he is a judge and the president of the jury for the AICP Awards show that, according to its website, honors marketing and communications in motion image, an award show that is big in the drag queen mentorship community. And according to Genie, he has been able to leverage his status as a prominent drag queen to bolster his personal brand, getting him appointments like his position at the AICP Awards show and moving him up the ladder at Disney.
What I've really done is I've used my drag career and being a drag race and doing all the things to bolster my personal brand. Like, for example, I also judge and put award shows, creative award shows. Just taking big marketing award shows and had and other places all over the world. So I serve on the jury as jury president for a number of these awards. I'm going to New York in a month to judge, to be a jury president for the award show.
What's the award show called?
It's like AICP.
AICP.
It's like listen to this.
Very cool.
But all the people in the room with me are industry legends. Big young ones.
Can you give me a name?
Oh, look, it's famous for our history, like Greg Hahn and Tiffany Rose. What's their name?
Now that we've established that Genie is heavy into drag, let's take a look at how Genie is operating over at Disney as a creative head for them. Genie speaks to our undercover journalist stating he has a 4 to 5 month project that will allow an LGBTQ pride campaign to grow across Disney television.
So again, I know people are watching this and they're thinking, okay, Valiant, we kind of knew all this. I keep reminding folks, if these videos that James O'Keefe is dropping, it's not for us per se. Yeah. It's for everybody else out there who really doesn't know. And there's millions and millions and millions of people out there that do not know this stuff. And on top of that, what we're about to hear confirms from the inside, in fairly plain language, what Disney, or at least what their more senior level marketing teams, like this guy here, is actually angling to achieve.
Current projects and that will take up the rest of the next 4 months, 4 or 5 months, the next 4 months.
Yeah.
It will be our pride campaign across different television.
I've had it with all my personal and private.
So he's got another commercial here, but you can see he's talking about, they're going to do this campaign all across Disney to try to, make more of this, that, and the other thing. All right.
Jeannie Giannani, the creative marketing director at Disney, was asked about allowing LGBTQ content to be shown to children. Jeannie agreed that he wants children to see the content and that it is, quote, the unspoken thing.
I despise those kind of people that want to accuse of Disney of grooming children. Like,
Okay, he despises people that think that Disney wants to groom children. Just remember what he said right there, because just like an episode of The Acolyte, it's about to change on a dime 5 seconds later for no reason.
but I also want children to see LGBTQ content. Don't you agree?
What? I mean, it's okay. Which is it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's the unspoken thing.
Drag queen Jeannie was more than excited to discuss how Disney is ramping up their LGBTQ promotion at parks, content, and entertainment, stating that Disney is doing Pride Nights all by themselves without third parties involved and that it is, quote, a big step.
I'm particularly glad the program that they've just started doing these projects. Like last year was the first one.
Now, this, I did not know this, or at least I really wasn't completely aware of this. And I think this is key, what he's about to say, about how Disney in the past was working a lot with third parties. And we've covered that. We've covered the fact that Disney for 2 years was a platinum sponsor, and I'm sure they'll renew with Out and Equal, which bills themselves as the largest LGBTQ political action conference on planet Earth, I think, or at least in the United States. And Disney has done huge in-kind donations to them by way of discounted or free park tickets, room and board. They host their big conventions at Disney World in Orlando. I think they did for 23, and they're doing one again in 24. I think they're usually around September. So that's a third-party linkage, right? Somebody comes in, asks Disney for help, but now he's saying Disney is taking it one step further.
Before this, every Pride event was third party into partnership with Disney.
Sure.
You know, like they bring in and Disney would help. But now Disney's doing it themselves, so it's a big step.
There you go. So now Disney is basically taking the initiative from the inside to do more of this, to push more of this. And like this guy says, you know, it's kind of unspoken. I mean, we don't like it when people accuse us of grooming children, but we sure do want to expose children to as much as possible because, hey, that's real life, right? That's what we want to represent everybody to children, to which I keep coming back to. It's funny, couple of 1, 2, 3 generations ago, the population that identified in that vein was 1, 2 to 3%. Now all of a sudden, you got Gen Z and millennials identifying 20 to 30% that way. I wonder why that is. It's just a chicken and the egg situation where, okay, we want to represent everybody. We want to expose kids to this because it's out there. Well, it's out there more prevalently because you keep trying to expose children at younger and younger and younger ages to this. And James has some clips here in a minute. Ron, Michelle, any thoughts so far?
Michelle?
No, I mean, this is what I've come to expect from Disney. I think we all know and like you said, this isn't for us really. This is for the masses. Mm-hmm. But we've known that this is their agenda, that this is what they're trying to do. And it's obvious to all of us who've been paying attention.
I just would say something I've said on the show before, Valiant, which is that it may very well be a sort of real life for a certain percentage of people.
Sure.
But we're skipping over a logical step here, which is why are children being exposed to sexualized content at all? Heterosexual or homosexual? So then you respond, well, Ron, there are moms and dads, hetero moms and dads in Alice in Wonderland and everything. Mm-hmm. So we have to balance that out, right? Answer: no, because moms and dads are that's where babies come from.
Yeah.
That's how families come into existence. And we're not talking about moms and dads' sexuality as such.
Right.
It is corrosive on two levels. Then it is, without even, in other words, grooming is a loaded term.
Mm-hmm.
Do children watch this stuff and then want to, does that make them think about their own sexuality in a way that they otherwise might not? Probably yes, but the point is, it's making them think about their sexuality. That in and of itself is not something that's normal and healthy for children at the developmental stage that Disney is aiming its content at. That's the problem. We're not trying to deny reality. We're trying to keep things age appropriate. That's
Yeah,
the point.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, if Netflix tomorrow, came out with a show about drag queens, I don't think. I mean, people would go like, "Oh, good lord," roll their eyes or whatever. But nobody would complain like this about it because it's a Netflix show that's not being marketed to children, and that's the big difference. And I think you're right on that one. There's a couple of minutes left here. Let's grab.
When asked by our OMG undercover journalist if he would authorize drag queens to be present at Disneyland, where children are, mind you, Jeannie the drag queen said, well, he would love to, and it will happen at some point.
So, for do drag, like any your creative marketing director, am I going to see a drag queen at Disneyland or anything like that? Do you want to do that? Get a drag queen at Disneyland. That'd be cool. That would be cool.
I'm sure that would happen at some point.
Remember, this is a man that is directly impacting what children watch, interact with online, and experience in person through Disney's TV, films, and theme parks. So you might say, drag queens? What's the big deal?
I know there's little babies here, but close your ears.
Well, it has been widely reported on multiple instances where the normalization of drag queens pushed.
And remember, the videos he's showing here, these are the really tame ones. We've all seen the videos floating around, especially in the last 30 days on social media, of what some of these folks are doing at these, so-called family-friendly parades, where they're riding around completely naked with everything hanging out, like this week's episode of House of the Dragon.
No shrinkage in evidence is what you're saying.
No, none. Just parading it in front of children, shaking it in front of children. 10 to 15 years ago, I'd say everywhere in the country, you'd be arrested on the spot. I mean, for indecency, for public indecency. I mean, it's just now, because if you're a certain way and you're expressing your repressed true self and you're doing it during the right month, and you have the right politics, you can just do it right in front of kids all the time now. And you tell me this is not, like Ron said, this is about sexualizing children. This is about making them think about sexuality. And we're talking about this happening in front of kids, like you can see here. We're talking about kids that are like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old in a lot of cases. It's absolutely disgusting behavior. And an end has to be put to all of this.
On children through such means as Drag Queen Story Hour in schools and children's programming is being used.
Again, that is a Disney Plus show right there, what you're looking at. That is a look at the Disney Plus logo and look at the dress that this is wearing. It's got all the Mickey Mouse things on it with the Pride Mickey Mouse ears. This is on Disney Plus.
To radicalize and sexualize children.
Now, these other clips like this, I want to make clear, are not as far as I'm concerned, but when you'll notice what is on Disney Plus has that Disney Plus logo at the bottom. O'Keefe made sure you knew which clips were which.
Wait, so what was that, Valiant? The previous screen with the orange hair, the pink, flaming pink?
This. Right here. I don't remember exactly what this show was. I remember we talked about this was months ago, where they had a drag thing that was connected to Disney, an LGBTQ themed thing, and this was on Disney Plus. And imagine what it is. I mean, they're basically talking to kids. I mean, this was something that was general audiences on Disney Plus, right? I'd have to go back. I can't remember the name of it, Ron, right now. But I do remember.
I'm not looking to watch it. I was curious about the context that in which it was televised.
Somebody in the chat might remember. Somebody in the chat that might remember what this show was. It's been a few months. I remember discussing this, and I'll be darned if I can remember what exactly this was specifically tied to, or what the name of this thing was. If Pro were here, he might remember this, but or John Trent would probably remember this.
Is being used to radicalize and sexualize children, crushing their innocence, essentially grooming them and making them ripe for victimization by predators. These grooming techniques are not new and have been widely reported on. After Disney's debacle, where just last year Disney World Park employee Paul Veal was arrested and charged with over 900 counts of child porn, you find it surprising that Disney would even come close.
And he wasn't the only one, Michelle. There have been a number found there. Now, again, it's a big company. It's got lots and lots of employees, tens of thousands of employees in Florida alone. No company out there is immune to having this happen to them. But again, it's not
especially
lost.
No company that hires as many people with these proclivities.
Well, that's just it. It's just it's an extra feather in the cap, I guess, that it just keeps happening to Disney.
Close to doing anything that could be remotely seen as the sexualization of children. So back to Jeannie. Would you allow someone that so blatantly promotes these types of hypersexualized techniques to babysit your children? Likely not. So why would Disney, supposedly a children's brand, hand the reins of programming and promotion power over to a man like Jeannie? Is the power of the DEI movement so strong that Disney would risk the safety and mental health of your children to submit to their woke demands? Promoting drag queens is probably one Jeannie Disney should have kept in the bottle. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and stay tuned for our upcoming reports. We have many sources coming to us inside Disney. America First Legal putting out a letter, EEOC complaint, and sign up to be an...
Yeah, and the EEOC complaint from America First Legal, I believe, was a renewal of their prior request from a couple of months ago. They posted it on X, I think, yesterday. And I looked because O'Keefe was saying, "Oh, look here," and I was like, "Okay, that's the same one that they sent in a few months ago when they said the EEOC complained about Disney's discriminatory hiring practices, or alleged discriminatory hiring practices." So that's what he was referring to there. And as he mentioned, like we said earlier, more people are coming forward right now to O'Keefe Media Group, to bring more stories. So I'm sure this probably isn't the last we've heard of it. And as we've seen in the last week or two since all of this began, even Elon Musk is retweeting on this. And Musk has been keeping his eyes on Disney because I think he's just having too much fun with them right now.
Well, but also, I think it's very clear Musk is really very, very heavily dedicated to heterosexuality.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's really made a personal stake in making a major stand towards repopulating the world with as many women as possible. To help him out.
Yes. Michelle, any final thoughts on that one?
No. Again, this is just not a surprise to any of us, I would say.
No, I would probably say not. But again, wanted to bring that up because I thought it was too good not to. But as it stands, I want to mention. Oh, we lost Ron for a second with the video. As it stands, it was kind of an interesting segue into the Acolyte, which I want to talk about before, while we still have some time here, and this particular article, because I want to show y'all this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Star Wars' biggest problem is the fans. Now, what does this have to do with the nature of this O'Keefe video, you may be wondering? Well, let me show you. This has been getting shared all over the place since this dropped earlier today, which I'm sure Collider knows what they're doing. They're basically a troll website. Every now and again, they might put out something of a cohesive thought based in logic. But more often, we get bilge like this. This from Cameron Barnett. Star Wars' biggest problem is the fans. And we can go right to the sub-headlines here. Let me see if you can figure out where I'm going with this segue and this connection. Star Wars projects have been facing relentless online hate and criticism, impacting performers and creators. Modern Star Wars projects have expanded the universe with diverse representation, but also weather backlash in the process. The future of Star Wars should be focused on representation and inclusivity, overcoming toxic elements in the fandom. Are y'all starting to see the because this is what we're dealing with. And they go down in here to be very specific about what more diversity and inclusivity should be. And like we always say, and I'll preface the comments again with this, diversity and inclusivity is fine. There's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. The problem is that when you're a company like Disney and you put that as your end-all, be-all prime directive at the corporation, unfortunately, other things are going to suffer, because if you're making things like race or ethnicity or sexual orientation or gender orientation or whatever a primary driving force of your hiring decisions so you can fill a certain ratio, an arbitrary metric that you've established for yourself, invariably, at some point, the actual quality of output is going to suffer, as opposed to just saying, let's just go hire the best people for the job, no matter who the hell they are or who they sleep with. How about that? That would be a really good idea. Ron, I thought you were trying to say something?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, you don't have to go further than the problem with Star Wars is the fans.
Right.
Yeah.
The problem with this failing business is the customers.
That's always the case.
But here's where the rubber hits the road. When people talk about, as we do, as one does, cultural Marxism, and it seems like perhaps, well, come on, Marxism, the difference between cultural Marxism and economic Marxism is that in economic Marxism, you seize the means of production. These people have seized the means of cultural production. Their problem is with the unenlightened proletariat, with its insistence on bourgeois values.
Mm-hmm.
They want to lead them into the promised land of perfect, woke humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of market forces, regardless of their preferences, each according to his need, and we'll determine what they need.
Apparently, another Ray movie.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
So here, that's what's going on. They've taken control of Disney. The suits don't have the guts to tell them, look at the spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no, there's no word for them to go on it.
Yeah. Indeed. And the article goes into more detail, and continues to be angry about the fact that, the fans out there don't like this show. And they had stories this week, and I'm not even going to, there's a streaming, I don't know really how to describe it other than, let's call it a streaming service amalgamator. They're an app or a service that you can use called Real Good, REELGOOD, I think is how they spell it. And they came out with a story earlier this week. I've never heard of this before. Apparently, they have tens of millions of users, quote unquote, in the US and the UK. They formed about in 2017. They've never, to my knowledge, put out any kind of regular streaming data. But suddenly this week, they decided to come out with a report saying, hey, The Acolyte is the second most popular Disney Star Wars show we've ever measured. Based on what? And, they talk about views and then they said something else. It was viewership and then engagement. And engagement, when you look at statistics, especially now when it comes to streaming shows, like we've talked about parrot analytics before, engagement tends to be this very nebulous term. And it can include everything up to and including not just views on the shows, but you clicked on the info tab in the menu in the app to see what the show is about. You hashtagged it and you tweeted about it. Social media traffic, with no regard to whether or not that social media traffic is overwhelmingly positive or is trashing a show. So, I mean, I threw that right out the window. I didn't even want to spend time doing a video on it because it felt like it was so stupid, and I'd just address it on a live show. But
well, hold on. You know, Valiant, they're not the only one making that argument. So I guess like failing businesses are just starting to make that. I've been hearing that like people with the NBA. I mean, the NBA just came off horrible ratings for their finals, and that's the stuff they're saying. Well, you can't measure it just in views. We get engagement. Well, what does that mean? Like,
what is it? Yeah, engagement doesn't pay your bills.
No,
that's just it. You can't go to Procter and Gamble or Johnson and Johnson or Ford Motor Company and say, you know what, we're going to promise you at least 10 million views for tonight's broadcast of the NBA. So we want this much for a 15-second spot. And then they come back and they say, oh, but 5 million of that might be over on Twitter.
Yes.
No, it doesn't work. Nobody's going to pay for that. It's like, it's ridiculous. They want, how many eyeballs are going to be watching this show? That's all that matters. That's all Disney Plus and Amazon and Netflix, now that all have advertising tiers, throw in Peacock and Paramount Plus as well. That's all they can actually sell on. But you have articles like this from Collider, and it seems like to me, the point of all this is that if the Acolyte was really doing this well, and it was so successful on Disney Plus, which we know it's really not. Ahsoka's numbers weren't that great compared to Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2, which were still basically the apex of viewership for Disney Plus. And that's when they had way fewer viewers, way fewer subscribers than they do now in 2024. And it's been steadily declining. So, I mean, you have to keep putting out these defensive pieces out there. And I think some of these creative marketing people, like the guy we just saw in the O'Keefe video, a lot of those folks out there are responsible for reaching out to their contacts in the media like this, just as if it was the White House or somebody else saying, yeah, we need some puff pieces out here. We need you to help out. It's just like a bot on Twitter. This is like a botted article. Oh, it was written by a real person, but probably at the behest of some pushing behind the scenes. But they go in here, they talk about convenience of digital connection aside, there's always been online trolls, toxic fans and comments ready to pounce on anyone who dares to bear their authentic self in public life. And the newest round of controversies and unfounded criticisms directed at Star Wars projects demonstrates the beloved sci-fi franchise is no different. They talk about the heated debates, but I wanted to get down to a few things and a few specific things here. They talk about Leslie Headland's groundbreaking series, The Acolyte. Again, you want to use a term like that, please tell me what was so groundbreaking about this show. And don't tell me because you had a non-binary, bisexual black woman, Amanda Stenberg, as the lead. And that's how she identifies. I'm not trying to make fun of her. I'm not trying to make up a joke. That is how she self-identifies. I'm trying to do it correctly, to be fair. But I mean, if you're telling me that that is what constitutes groundbreaking here, because that's all they've told us about this show since the beginning. Again, what does that have to do with the show itself? Nothing.
I mean, it's groundbreakingly bad.
There's that.
They made this for $200 million. That's groundbreaking.
That's what's groundbreaking. That's actually bank breaking. Is more like it. But he said Leslie Headland's groundbreaking series has been relentlessly review bombed online, causing The Acolyte to possess a huge disparity between its positive critical reception and abysmal audience scores. Let me tell you something. There's 30 or 40,000 user reviews on The Acolyte right now, and it's at 14%. That doesn't happen with just rando, pissed off in the basement, neckbeards or, incels or whatever they want to call people like us, just showing up and bombing a show on social media. No, that happens because there is some genuine disgust at how terrible this show is, and they have a lot of good reason for it. It's just the way it is. I mean,
And
there's so many.
how much do you want to bet, Valiant? How much do you want to bet in this massive company there was probably an email sent out encouraging people to go rate the Acolyte good to keep it at just 14%?
Oh, look, we've talked about that before. The whole issue with review bombing, and I'll explain it again for a lot of our new viewers. There's a big difference between review bombing down and review bombing up. And the big difference is this. Companies like Disney, Universal, Paramount, Warner Brothers, they all do it. They hire these big, expensive Madison Avenue social media firms in New York and the other ones out there in Los Angeles. And what is their job? Their job is to go promote a given project, whatever they budget for, to go make people get interested in it. Companies like Disney literally pay for positive press. Okay? You know what doesn't happen? Show me the constituency out there that's spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to just go down, to get people to downvote stuff. It doesn't exist.
Yes.
You know, it's just one of those things. It's two sides of very different coins. Ron?
Yeah, I'm just thinking. I'm thinking through who would be financing. It's one thing to say there are a lot of bitter incels, men who don't want, women to succeed, yada yada. But if you're maintaining, as I think they are, that this is being done by some kind of organized, force of evil, who is going to make that investment, and for what purpose?
That's just it.
Is it Nelson Peltz doing it to get revenge? I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's been going on since long before Nelson Peltz and Elon Musk. This goes back to Captain Marvel back in 2019. So, that kind of falls flat on its face. But here's where we really start to get the bitterness from this article. This was a time, talking about back when the first Star Wars movie came out and Jaws and Rocky. This was a time back in the 70s and 80s when Hollywood relied almost exclusively on traditional tropes to tell stories exclusively through a Eurocentric white male lens. Protagonists, remember Carl Weathers in Rocky and Carl Weathers in Predator, that white guy, Carl, who was also, Grief Karga in The Mandalorian and Star Wars. Yeah, this white male-centric.
Let's just also say, too, on those two examples, it's also worth noting that Star Wars obviously has always been welcoming, and you can see that when you go back and watch the excitement of people going to see Return of the Jedi in theaters and how many white, black people, are there. But it is worth noting the two examples they mentioned, which both have, black people and different ethnicities in it. Star Wars was written by a white man, and so was Rocky. Stallone wrote it. So, of course, he cast himself as the lead.
Yeah.
Those aren't even good examples.
No, but I mean, the point is, those were just my examples to throw out there.
Oh, okay,
well, they mentioned Rocky and Jaws, but I mentioned Rocky because, it's like you had very strong black male leads in that movie. In the first, the second, and the third one, and even the fourth one up till he died, in the movie, of course. But you can see the bitterness here. Consisted of domestic female or ultra masculine tough guys, while supporting cast consistently or typically consisted, of domestic female characters or problematic stereotypes. And his films released.
Problematic. These stereotypes existed because they were, in fact, a reflection of the world when these films were made. And you know what? It is true that, look, the studios were built by overwhelmingly white men or Jewish men. I don't know this week whether we're Jews or white or not. But one of the things that these Jewish men who built the original studios wanted desperately to do was to be accepted by all of America. They were super patriotic. They were they are responsible to a large extent for a great deal of Jewish assimilation because of the way they portrayed not themselves and not the worlds that they came from. I mean, people don't appreciate that a lot of the people whose names are still on the studios spoke with heavy Yiddish accents.
Yeah.
These were Eastern European Jews who came from absolutely nothing. And they wanted to be successful Americans. Many of them were truly terrible people. Some of them were not terrible people. Many stories. But the point is, they weren't interested in oppressing people. They were interested in making money. And they thought that the way to do that was to reflect the America that they lived in.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to tell me, well, the America that they lived in didn't have representation. The America that they lived in, was based on fine, you can tell me that. Just understand that's a cultural Marxist narrative.
Yeah.
And because the people who were living it, what they were finding was they were coming from phenomenal poverty and all of a sudden becoming some of the richest people in this country because they were, for the first times, not only in their lives, but in the entire history of any lives that they could even relate to for generations in their families. They were not being discriminated against in terms of their opportunity. I mean, actually, everyone knows the Jews were certainly discriminated against. A lot of these men who were some of the richest people in America, studio heads, were not allowed into country clubs because they were Jewish. But what did they do? They started their own country clubs. In New York, Jews were not allowed to start to go into the white shoe law firms. What did they do? They started Skadden Arps. They started Rockefeller Lipton, and they ate the lunch of the white shoe firms. That's what you can have your feelings hurt, and you cannot be included, and you cannot be reflected, and you can still win. The best revenge is living well. But what these people, what the cultural Marxists want is to destroy everything because of their own feelings of inadequacy and guilt and lack of merit and lack of ability to compete. And on that note, I wish everybody a good night and thank you for letting me join you guys for the last hour. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate
So
you.
long.
We'll see you Sunday, we hope.
Good to see you.
So go
And
ahead.
Ballot, I was just going to say on all this, and not to be overtly political, but it's in everyone's mind.
Yeah.
I just think that the Acolyte is almost the equivalent of Thursday's debate, where these companies have lied, and he's sharper than a tack, and then the debate happens, and it's so bad they can't lie anymore.